ricksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead. Make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. First, foremost, $4,418,012. $4,418,012. And you go, well, what is that, Rick? What's 4 million? What's the significance of 400 million? 4,400,000. Well, that's I'm sorry, I screwed that up. It's 418. 418 million. And the amount of money that the NRA has spent, $500 million just in 2016 alone. 418. And you go, $500 million. $500 million they spent on this election cycle. And you go, well, why? Well, so that when you have a gun tragedy like you had today, when you have someone who goes in and shoots up a school, the 18th shooting this year alone, and we're only a month and a half into the year, they spent that kind of money. $418 million. For what? Well, so that when this happens, politicians don't go running out and say, how do we fix this? All the right-wing politicians that I've heard today all have run out and said, whoa, let's not politicize this horrible shooting. No, now is not the time to politicize. Now is the time to mourn, to pray. Well, you know what? We've been praying long enough. Enough. And nothing, not a peep really from the White House. Got a tweet, not much more. There wasn't a press conference, actually canceled the press conference. And you go, how did we get to this place where you're looking at all of this money being poured into politics? You look at all of the just insane reactions to what is more than just a tragedy. And I know, and I've heard it 1,000 times. Rick, guns don't kill people. People do. And I keep coming back with the gun helps. And yes, I know there are horrible people out there who want to do horrible things. There are people out there who, if you give them a pocket knife, they're going to figure something out. There are going to be people who drive trucks. And yes, I know that. But the last time I checked, there weren't 18 of those instances in a school where now 17 children are not going to go home to their parents. They're not going to get up tomorrow and go back to school. They're not going to go to college. They're not going to get married. They're not going to have children. They're not going to lead a life beyond what happened today. And it's all because we have this gun fetish in this country. But I got the right to bear arms. Well, then cut the sleeves off. Because at some point, your right infringes on everybody else's. And these military-style weapons, at some point you have to say what they are. They're made to kill. And they're made to kill large numbers of people as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I'm sorry, you don't need a military-grade weapon to go target shooting. You don't need a military-grade weapon to go hunting with. You don't need a military-grade weapon to keep somebody from breaking into your house. Sorry, I'm not buying it. And one of the most disgusting things I saw today, and look, Alex Jones is a despicable human being. And for every person who compares me, you're a left wing, you're Alex Jones, I take offense to that. And I'm almost never offended. The fact that today he tweeted out pictures of close-ups of guns that he had etched things into is angering. It's hurtful, but not unpredictable. This is who these people are. And these people are the ones who seem to have a lot of sway in our government right now. These are the folks who right now seem to have a lot of power. And the question is how do you pull some of that back? This November, the hope is that we throw the bums out. You look at all of the insanity that this administration has brought on. You've got a president who defends child molesters and wife beaters. Oh, but today he did come out and say that he is totally opposed to domestic violence. A little late for that, don't you think? Just a little late. And I got to tell you, I can't imagine, what these families are going through. Because to me, this is preventable. We could do something about this. The question is will we? And I look at the NRA. The NRA is not the group that I remember growing up around, where they were promoting gun safety and smart gun laws. Now they seem to not just be owned and controlled by the gun industry. They seem to control and own the gun industry itself, to where sadly every time one of these tragedies happens, gun sales go up. It's almost like a win-win situation for them. Horrible tragedy. Scared people with small hands who need big guns. And then sales go. I mean, it's really quite a perverted scenario. So I come back to, what is it going to take? How many of these do we have to endure? How many shootings of, children in school where they should be safe? How many of these do you have to endure? How much of this stuff has to happen before we come to our senses and wake up to the reality that there's serious problems going on, and that at some point we've got to do something about it? Now, will this government do anything about it? No. Trump is going to do nothing. The Republicans are going to do nothing. Probably a good number of Democrats are not. And the reality is anybody who got money from the NRA should be shown the door. Every person who took money from the NRA should have an opponent running against them saying they took money from the NRA. And if I hear Ted Cruz one more time say that, we can't politicize things, not going there. Not going there. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do we need smarter gun laws? Is it possible to stop evil people from doing evil things? Or can we take the tools out of their hands to mitigate the damage and the carnage? I'd love to hear it. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Like I said, the Donald said he's totally opposed to domestic violence in regards to the Porter thing. This Porter thing doesn't seem to be going away because there's a bunch of folks who, I guess, not getting their security clearances through. And you got to wonder how much of it is this. Now, it's being reported that Trump is criticizing Porter. Actually, I guess called him sick at one point. I don't know how much I buy of that. But, we'll see as this continues to play out because there is a bunch of it. Also found out today that the president has advocated for a 25-cent per gallon gas tax increase. Let me say that again. He has advocated for a 25-cent per gallon gas tax increase. Now understand, right now it's 18.4 cents a gallon for gasoline, 24.4 cents for diesel fuel. So he's talking about more than doubling the current gas tax. And who's that going to hurt? Well, we know who it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt those working class voters who voted for Donald Trump. It's going to hurt those people at the very bottom who are struggling the most. And I'm not surprised by it. Not surprised at all. Because if you look at this budget and look, I've looked line after line, program after program. What this Trump budget tells me is that, and look, this isn't a surprise. This is exactly what the budget he put out last year was. It's the priorities that the Republicans have been pushing for a very long time. It's about more for the handful and less for everybody else. It's about slashing Medicare and Medicaid. It's about doing away with job training. It's about harming people with disabilities. It's about taking food out of the mouths of children so that we can, hey, we need a bigger military. At some point, do you start believing who these people tell us they are? At some point, do we finally wake up to the reality that we were conned? That, those people who voted for Trump were conned, by really probably one of the greatest carnival barking con artists since Charles Ponzi himself. And at what point do we say enough and throw these bums out? And the hope is this election cycle, that this blue wave continues. Because, almost every Tuesday we're finding another area where a Democrat has taken back a seat that a Republican held. Because we're mad, we're angry, we're ticked off. And I think it's being pointed in the right direction. And don't let today's tragedy stop any of that. We can have smart policy. We can do good things. We can turn this country around. We just have to have the will and the want. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts. You can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
10% of the people own 90% of the wealth. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day 300 commercial laundresses in Kansas City walked off the job demanding a union. Male laundry delivery drivers successfully organized the previous summer. They joined the women on the picket lines. The Employers Association had financed an open shop drive since the beginning of the war. The laundry companies refused to grant wage increases to the drivers. They also refused to acknowledge the women's demand for a union. The Women's Trade Union League tried to hold hearings about the strike at the Hotel Muehlbach, but the hotel refused to allow striking black workers into the building. As a result, their white co-workers refused to testify. When the hearings were finally moved, the women told of intolerable conditions. Laundresses complained of filthy workplaces and potential fire traps. They reported that laundry owners had put together their own private police force. These guns for hire assaulted women strikers, breaking one woman's arm, another's wrist, and injuring many more in hopes of deterring them from pressing on with their demands. In the 6th week of the strike, 25,000 more Kansas City workers called a general strike. According to historian Maureen Weiner Greenwald, they supported the laundry workers' demands for increased wages, union recognition, and enforcement of state regulations regarding hours and working conditions. Greenwald notes the general strike was relatively peaceful until the Kansas City Railway attempted to run streetcars with scab labor. Finally, the laundry companies agreed to union recognition and later promised wage increases. They soon reneged, but the show of solidarity among workers provided key lessons for future labor struggles in Kansas City. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Your working class radio experience, where hard work, common sense, and rational thought are a reality. The Rick Smith Show.
Working hard to make a left, rain shed a farm red. A father son left to carry on, blue denim had his vein. He's a working class man.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. I'll tell you, this November, so much riding on this November. The direction of this country, and I know we say it every election cycle that this is the one. This is the most important in history, and I got to be honest, this is the most important election, at least as far as I'm concerned, in the history of this country, at least in the history of the state of Pennsylvania. But across the country, we're seeing people who are throwing their hats into the ring, standing up, stepping forward, saying, you know what? I am going to run. I am going to be the one to put myself in that fishbowl and take on an incumbent, to take on an issue, to fight for a better future for not just ourselves, but for our children. I look to New York, the 11th Congressional District there. There's a guy named Dan Donovan who's the incumbent Republican right now. And if you may remember, he took over for the guy, he won a special election for the guy who got himself into a whole bunch of insanity, threatening to beat people up in the halls and just all kinds of craziness. Not been the greatest guy. Somebody I think would be great to see that seat flipped, which is why I've asked Omar Vaid to come talk with us. He's a union member, also a candidate for New York's 11th Congressional District. Omar, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you, listeners. Thank you.
So the first question I gotta ask is, one, why would you want to do this to yourself? And two, what's the mission? What's the plan? Why are you doing it?
Okay, so I think everyone listening, I think anyone that knows your show, I think we know this is a really special moment in time. And you're right. You're absolutely right. This is our chance. This is the most important election in Pennsylvania, in New York, all over the country. It's a special moment where it's not even just about opposing someone or whatever. This is a real opportunity. And as a fraternal, union brother and sisters listening, and people interested in workers and working rights. Of course, we have Janus versus AFSCME that's up soon. Threats to unions as we know them, that even their existence. And we saw the Constitutional Convention in New York. New York is one of the strongest union states, and we even saw here in New York threats coming from our state, from our actual state. And this is a moment where anyone listening, Staten Island and South Brooklyn, there's more union members in this district than anywhere else in New York City. And it's exciting, to when you go through, I've sent endorsement letters to over 400 unions. And it's what's most exciting, of course, you're a big labor historian, is to see the local 1, the local 3, the early numbers pop up. And here it's this is where it started for us. It's where we go back the longest. Like the brothers and sisters in my trade, they talk about the 3rd and 4th generation, and we think about our values, and they're worth defending, and they're worth fighting to save for the future. So this is an opportunity that I saw where Staten Island and Brooklyn and myself, we can be from this seat. This seat is underutilized, and we can be leaders in strengthening unions and protecting them and unionizing job sites, and really like we can show off our history a little bit.
Yeah, and really this year more than ever, because I think anybody who has been following the Janus versus AFSCME case, they're pretty confident that it's going to go the wrong way, that Neil Gorsuch will be the 5th vote that everyone thought Scalia was going to be in the Friedrichs case. And this assault on public sector workers and this imposing of a national right to work law is going to happen. So having someone in the halls of power who are going to be able to help mitigate some of the damage, to help workers maintain some rights, and maybe even pass laws to help protect workers, I think is vitally important right now.
That's absolutely the case, and that for me, this is like it's a special moment where, like here in this district, it's exciting. Like I was in it was a labor for our revolution meeting, and to have all like the members and the people who were there and the energy, it's just exciting that here in this place, I think it's a special spot, and also of course in Pennsylvania. In New Jersey, in a lot of the blue states, of course, too, we it's something in our history. And so we think of values and protection and things like that. And that's what I intend to do. I intend to be someone you can even reach. I'm famous for that. You can actually reach me directly, very easily through Twitter or through phones or offices. And I'll come and help you. I'll come help you unionize a job site. I'll come and actually help and use social media or show up, and we'll do it together with the union bosses that will on a local level, and then on a national level, we'll strengthen all these laws, and we'll write new ones. And so as there's things of course right now that we're resisting, but let's talk about going further. And looking into our history for inspiration.
No, I mean, one of the things that I talk about quite often, Omar, is, how do we rebuild that prosperous working class that our grandparents fought for? That my grandparents, came back from World War II and went to the shop floor and said, you know what, we're not taking this, what anymore, and we're going to fight for better wages, hours, conditions, a better future for ourselves and our children and grandchildren. And what's happened over the last 40 years is all of those gains that generation fought for have been clawed back by a wealth class that has honestly and truthfully been extremely committed to labor's demise, to destroying workers' rights, to destroying that prosperous working class. And I've been saying for a long time, it's got to take people like you. It's got to take people who are going to stand up and say, you know what, enough, vote for me. I'm going to Washington. I'm going to Albany or Harrisburg or Columbus, and we're going to take this thing in the right direction.
I totally agree. Like, I file my taxes as a mechanic, and, I did this, exactly for these reasons. And I thought, I didn't even own a suit. So when I went in to buy one, the first thing I asked was, do you have a suit made in America? And they said, no one's ever asked that, but we believe there is one. There's one, and I said, well, I don't have to try it on. That'll be the one I buy. I hope it fits. But it was union tailored, and, that tailor in Massachusetts really appreciates having that job. And it starts with awareness that can you even find the labeling if something's made in America? Is it even there? And there's, to pass legislation for proof and labeling and making it easier. And there should be a little Chinese flag on a Chinese product. You should know what you're walking out with. And there should be an American flag. It should be easy to see.
Yep.
And,
I agree.
that's easy. This is just like we have food. Our food is labeled, so correctly that why aren't our products? And also, like, to me, I'm really passionate about protectionism, that these trade deals, there's always going to be players who dump steel or dump solar panels, and there'll be someone who always violates trade deals. But we can protect. We did it in the auto trade,
right,
where we chose to protect that trade, and Toyota and Mercedes came here to build factories. We can protect our own in our trades. And I talk about protectionism and never isolationism and never privatization. And you're right, and never giving. They make it sound like the companies can't compete globally, so we should give them everything. And it's like, no, it's the American worker is the most efficient and hardworking in the world, if just given the opportunity to do the work.
No, you're absolutely right. And look, I'm right there with you. I talk about protectionism and isolationism, much as you framed. And I say, look, when I leave my house, I lock the door. I don't have a giant moat around my house, but I do lock the door. And, we should be having those conversations about, how do we protect American workers? Because if you went back to 2016, Donald Trump ran on just what you were saying. We're going to promote American products. We're going to save American steel. We're going to fight for American jobs and American workers. And yet here we are over a year into this nightmare. And none of those things have come to fruition or even, in my view, been attempted.
Well, I mean, I have, so many friends, who voted for our president and, brothers and sisters in my trade. And it is that he gave everyone hope. And that's the most crushing thing of all, is that, the tax plan actually encourages outsourcing. To me, that was, it was, my friends are, with the property taxes and things we're getting hit by. But to see that in this thing about, repatriating money, well, it encourages you to open a factory overseas because you pay a lower you only pay 10% in taxes instead of paying your domestic taxes here. It actually encouraged outsourcing. Like, it just was, to me, it was mind blowing, to see what his intentions were, and so, or how they wrote the legislation. I mean, it was so sad.
Well, the legislation was not for people like you or I, Omar. It wasn't for us. It was for the millionaires and billionaires. And I wouldn't even say the millionaires anymore. We've whittled this thing down to just the handful over the rest of us.
Yeah, you're absolutely, you're spot on, Rick.
So let me ask you the other side of this, because there are a lot of issues outside of union politics and workers' rights to organize. There's healthcare, there's infrastructure, there's all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing us moving in the right direction when you look at the healthcare discussion? I mean, I wasn't a huge Obamacare fan. I thought it was a step in the right direction. I've always been a Medicare for all guy. It just seems that having in the private sector, stealing money out of our pockets, not a helpful thing. Where do you find yourself on the healthcare issue?
I agree with you. I'm with you. And I've had this conversation with Teamsters, with the union trades. Like, I got my start in the union from Teamsters Local 817 that members, told me about. My father was union. And they brought me in, and it was about health care. They said, someday, kid, you're going to care about your health care. You're only 24, but you're going to care. And that was, 12 years ago. And, the thing was, like, sitting with families who, if unions get us very good and very generous health care, but when you go talk to your union president and ask every 3 years or however often there's a contract, ask why we don't get a wage increase. Ask why we don't get a pension fund increase. Ask why we give something up every year, and they'll tell you it's healthcare. It's the healthcare costs are out of control, and our leadership, they try so hard to fight for us to have low deductibles or zero deductibles, and they fight so hard for us to have the same healthcare we've always had or to keep it really good, and that's the problem. The costs are so high. Ask your union leadership that if our employers paid 5% and we just paid 1%, we would save. We don't see the bill, but there's a 10 to 15% cost on your salary that would be going to our wage increases, would be going to our pension fund, that we can have the savings. We can have that 6%. Ask your union leadership. That's where it goes. It goes to healthcare.
Yeah. Do you think that on the whole healthcare debate that we weren't as a society ready to have that discussion, that people didn't really know how much healthcare was costing them because a lot of employers, it was part of the wage package? Because over the years, look, I mean, unions have done such a great job of making people's lives better wages, hours, conditions, all of that. And I was a Teamster for more than 20 years. We always had Cadillac healthcare. It was the best.
Exactly.
You walk in, you had a card, whatever you needed was taken care of.
The best healthcare, yeah.
Absolutely. And not just for the members, but also for non-union workers in the same kind of industry. Their benefits were better too because of the union benefits. And as the union density has dwindled, what's happened is these employers have gone, hey, here's an opportunity to shift all of these healthcare costs onto the backs of these working people. And we've been kind of taken by it and shocked by it. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's the thing, is that when you don't see the bill, we forget that our employer is paying for it. And we take it, it's not that we take it for granted, we just don't see the bill. And of course, anyone who gets paid on a W-2, we see the lines. We see, and I might have a D next to my name, but I want a reduction if you're getting a W-2 of every line. I think it's already, we pay too much. I'm not for putting anything more, but it's true. We don't see the bill. And yeah, it could be, I mean, if you're a Teamster or in my local, it could be $14,000 a year or $10,000 a year or $18,000 a year for your family that is being paid by your employer. It only needs to be about $5,000 or $6,000 for Medicare. So the savings in between, there's $10,000 a year there. And yeah, talk to your union leadership. We could take that in future contracts. We could have that for pension fund and wages.
Yeah, and it would be a boom to the economy because you'd have workers with more disposable income. But you said something that caught my attention, about the tax issue, because I hear people say all the time, "Oh, we're taxed enough already. Come on, Omar, we pay too much tax."
If you get paid on a W-2, that's true. You are taxed up because they take it from you up front. They withhold all your money, and you're absolutely right. The people at the very top, they don't get withheld. And they call them the Panama Papers and the private offices that do your taxes for you.
Yeah.
And they have these strategies to get out of things, and they can write things off creatively. But I mean, it's like we keep saying they need to pay their fair share. I mean, it's just that people who get paid on a W-2, it's just not fair. We're overtaxed, and then we get hit, of course, with our property taxes and our state taxes, and this is who I am. I mean, this is who I represent.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing after like 25 years of the Grover Norquist no tax pledge, that taxes on working people keep going up? I mean, we call it different things. Obviously, we've got fees for driver's licenses and fees for dog license and fees for this, fees for that. You got Trump today saying he wants to raise the gas tax $0.25 a gallon. That's a tax. All of this stuff just seems to hit working people the hardest, and those gamblers in Wall Street, they seem to walk away unscathed.
Yeah, I mean, my best friend, he voted for the president really with the intention, hoping to get tax relief, and his taxes in Long Island are over $20,000 a year. And the home has been in the family for a generation, and it was the ultimate betrayal to find out he can't write off his SALT deductions. I mean, he's in danger of losing his home. And there's many people listening who understand that it's the saddest thing in the world. That none of this is necessary. I mean, it's not fair.
We can change it, and how we change it is by putting people like you into office. So let me ask you, as you've been running through this, how do people help you? What's the ask? What's the 2-minute elevator talk?
Oh, to help us? Well, it's called joining #Team Omar. There's a lot of ways. I would be honored to have your help wherever you are in the country. If you're in Brooklyn and Staten Island or in the city, you can help locally. Otherwise, you can help many ways. There's OmarVaid.com, OmarVaid, and we're funded by we only take donations from individuals. So we're funded by people donating $5 or $20. That's who we are. We don't take corporate money or anything like that.
Well, I mean, at some point, it's got to be we the people who take back our government. I hope people will check out your website. Folks in your area will help out. I wish you the best, and as this continues down the road, I'd love to have you come back and share some more stories and some thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you, listeners.
Good stuff, Omar. I appreciate it. Let's take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
7, yeah, and I'll go to work at 9. I got no time for living, yeah, so I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many." When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Yeah, this one's for the workers who toil night and day, by hand and by brain.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So, it's being reported that there are 15 former CIA captives being held at the prison camp number 7 in Guantanamo Bay. As part of the 2019 Defense Department budget that they released this week, and they warn that the camp is at risk of mechanical, electrical, and secure communications failures. So for these 15, the Trump administration has budgeted $69 million to getting the Guantanamo Bay camp up to snuff at a cost of about $4.6 million per prisoner, while simultaneously we're taking food stamps and literally taking food out of the mouths of children. Fortunately, there is a new plan, and the new plan is we're going to cut the money, nothing for you. Going to cut that in half, and you're going to get these America's Harvest boxes. So I guess you're going to get a box of something. And if you look at the Twitters, they're all on both sides of this. You've got the one side who all supporting it, can't wait, saying if you're poor and hungry, you've got to get some garbage for you. Others saying that it makes them happy to listen to liberals complain because it makes it even better. And another one, getting food from the government should be a rock bottom experience that should look unappetizing. And you got the folks on the other side saying, hey, look, if you're supporting this kind of an idea, you've probably never had a hardship that you would need it. So you don't know what it's like. And, for me, the reality is in the wealthiest country in the world, at the wealthiest point in history, the least thing we can do is make sure that kids go to bed not hungry at night, that families are able to put food on the table. And this just seems to me to be another one of those scheme ideas that, well, gone in the wrong direction. And while I was reading through the Twitters, I came across a number of comments that caught my attention. And one set of comments was from a former social worker. She's now currently an ethical digital marketer, but she had some really great comments, and I wanted to talk to her. That's why I've asked Megan McCarthy to come talk with us. Megan, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So, when you look at these boxes as a former social worker, in your experience, what did you see? What did you think? What did you tweet out today?
Well, the Commodity Supplemental Food Program gives out boxes every month to seniors who don't have enough money to, pay for food.
Right.
So what I love, the program is fantastic. It does amazing. I've seen it save lives, literally save lives. But it's not a good program for a nationwide, for SNAP benefits, replacing that, or even, the food boxes and the SNAP benefits. It's just not feasible.
You brought up the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. It's one of the things that all during the Bush years I was screaming about, because every budget that George W. Bush had, he wanted to eliminate that particular program. And it was one of those things where it was just kind of a mean-spirited, kind of punitive thing in my thoughts. So it's good to hear you say that it helped, because I thought it was a good program to help supplement, not to replace other types of aid, but just to make sure that there was a baseline that folks were getting. And so to me, I look at this program that they're throwing out for the America's Harvest box, I'm going, if it was an addition to, I think it'd be a good thing. But as a matter of replacement, I'm extremely leery.
So most of the seniors in our program, they were on SNAP benefits along with our Commodity Supplemental Food Program. So it was not enough for them to get SNAP benefits. They were not getting the nutritional needs that they required, and that's why this program is available to the seniors, especially in the area that I was working.
Now, what kind of things were in this? Because, I remember I had spoken with then independent Congressman Bernie Sanders, now senator and presidential candidate. I remember him telling me, look, this is a bag of groceries. This is a bunch of stuff that, is going to get nutrition to seniors, and it's above and beyond everything. And he pitched it as a great program. In your view, what was in it? What was good? What was bad?
So it's a great food box full of the boxes are 40 pounds, so it's quite a bit of food, but they're all in cans. So if they had health problems like high blood pressure or heart problems, there were no alternate boxes to give them. We had to just recommend, just wash your vegetables off. We didn't have, we had some clients who were allergic to the milk that we were giving them, and we had nothing to supplement that. We had no alternate options for them. So that's one major problem that was with the program. That, and it was really difficult to distribute it to everyone in the program. We had a lot of clients who were living in rural areas on dirt roads out in the middle of nowhere practically, and they had to come in and pick up their food box, and not everyone had transportation. Which is why we also provided homebound services, where I would go around every month and, deliver the boxes to the customers who were not able to.
Wow. Let me ask you, on the food stamp front, we hear an awful lot of that there's waste, fraud, and abuse, and there's all this cheating going on, and all these people who are getting rich off of it. What's the, if you know, what's the average benefit that you know of that someone got from food stamps? It was like $200 a month or something like that. And if you know,
if you're lucky.
No, I'm just asking if you know what kind of dollars and cents we're talking about for a senior to be able to live on, and how much waste, fraud, and abuse went into any of those programs.
I did not see any. When the clients that we had, they got maybe $100 if they were lucky. It was nominal, the amounts that they were getting. So they really, really needed the food boxes that we were giving because they were literally starving. I had one couple come in before they had signed up for the program, and their skin was just sallow, hanging on them. It was gray, and they just looked absolutely miserable. And then the next month, after they had their box, they actually had color in their skin. They had rosy cheeks, and that completely changed my idea about, how valuable taxes are, because, you never want to pay taxes, but then when you see the actual good they're doing, you're like, okay, I will take all my money. Go ahead. This is doing amazing things. So, it was ridiculous to see just the change that I would see in the seniors that I was helping.
Now, it's my understanding, in talking about the Community Supplemental Food Program, that the average per month cost was like $20 a month per senior. It wasn't an awful lot of money, but as you've pointed out, it was life-changing kind of money. I'm not opposed to the idea of having one of these SNAP boxes if you wanted to add it in addition to. I think that's a good thing. Because look, I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland in Ohio. We were poor by just about every American standard. And I remember months, there was nothing left in the house. I mean, even the cockroaches were going, hey, where's the food? There was nothing because the food stamps ran out. And to me, if there's a way of saying, okay, we're going to provide a baseline to where, the cupboards aren't going to be empty. It may not be great, but it's going to be something. I'm in favor of that. But this kind of what appears to me to be punitive and just mean-spirited, I'm totally opposed to.
I definitely agree. It does so much good that it makes little sense to hurt people for taking advantage of these programs.
Yeah, we got an email coming in that said, how dare they do this to the SNAP food program? It's extremely personal. No one knows what the next person truly wants or needs. So what do you say to that? Because, this one size fits all mentality that, hey, you know what? What kind of a person would go, hey, you know what? It's supposed to be bad. If you can't take care of yourself and the government's got to give it to you, it's got to be unappetizing. It's got to be bad. What do you say to that?
So the one thing that was interesting about my experience working with WIC in their program was that I got to see both the people in my program and the people taking advantage of WIC. And you'd see them when they first came in for the very first time, and they were obviously struggling. And then, you'd see them a few months later, and things are just a little bit better, and they have just a little bit more hope. And they have, they can start seeing the possibilities for what their future can actually be like. And that is just invaluable to these people, along with, the nutrition that they need to survive. We should not be punishing these people. We should be lifting them up.
Yeah, we shouldn't be punishing people just because they're poor. Let me ask you, why did you get out of doing the social work? I know you're in this new gig doing the ethical digital marketing. What made you get out of it?
So marketing is a very interesting industry. There is a lot of ignoring different minority groups. I'm disabled, and I see a lot of businesses ignore disabled people. And so my goal is to change the way businesses do business, to make them consider the people who are not, male, white, what you see in the media all the time. So my goal is to kind of make things more diverse and accessible and welcoming, which helps businesses make more money. So it's a win-win situation all around.
No, that's a good thing. As a disabled person, what are your thoughts on what this administration's doing with the funding cuts, the budgetary cuts that they're doing for the disabled?
It's scary. I have a lot of friends who are also disabled, and these changes are threatening my friends' lives. So it's not just inconveniencing them. I might actually lose my friends. I might actually, for one of the most recent attempts to get rid of Obamacare, it would have reduced my life expectancy to 10 more years. With good health care, I can live to be 70 years old, but with the changes, I would have possibly 10 years to live, which is terrifying to be confronted with that.
And all so that we can give tax cuts to the very wealthy. I mean, look, if there's one thing you truly don't have it, that's one thing. But to say, you know what, we're going to cause you, Megan, 10 years off of your life so that we can give a tax cut to a very wealthy person seems, again, mean-spirited, punitive, and just flat wrong.
Definitely.
It's just scary stuff. Last question I've got for you. I want to go back to those programs for a second. They are life transformational. Do you have another story you could share with us of people that you met while doing this? Because I find that people tend to connect a little bit better when they actually think they know someone or they hear a story of it. I'm curious if you have another one.
I met so many fantastic people through the program, especially since I was the one delivering all the food boxes to 2 different cities. So there was a senior center that I would go and deliver the food boxes to, and you get to know everyone, and watching them just get slightly better, and talking to them and listening to their story of how they became so poor. Some people got scammed. Some people had their children steal their money. Some people, lost everything in 2008. So it was rarely ever something that they did. It was usually just an unfortunate accident that got them in that position. And that was heartbreaking.
And it could happen to any one of us at any time.
Definitely. I had one woman, she never actually got to sign up for the program because she made 13 cents too much. That was really difficult. And her husband had recently passed away, and she would call every few months saying, "Can you please get me on the program? I have no money for food. I'm disabled. I spend so much money on medicine, and I just can't. I am not surviving." So all I could do was, here are some charities because, you make 13 cents too much, which it's terrible. It really is.
How obscene. Just absolutely obscene. Megan, I appreciate you taking some time for me, sharing some of your stories with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it's just amazing to me that in the wealthiest country, at the wealthiest point in time, you hear those stories. It's maddening, it's angering, but again, not unpredictable, and certainly not unpredictable from the folks we have in power. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't step down from office a day after police in the country recommended he be charged with bribery and fraud. Investigators have been looking into Netanyahu for more than a year and say he illegally accepted more than $300,000 in luxury gifts in exchange for political favors. A separate allegation involves a proposed quid pro quo with a critical Israeli newspaper in exchange for more favorable coverage. It's up to Israel's Attorney General now to decide whether to bring charges against Netanyahu. In the meantime, Netanyahu is under no obligation to step down from office, and he said the charges against him are politically motivated. NATO is asking for more money from its military members. That request Wednesday comes as the alliance embarks on an ambitious reorganization. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
To keep our nations safe, we need more defense spending, investment in key capabilities, and forces for NATO missions and operations.
As part of the NATO modernization, the U.S. and Germany have signed up to oversee a pair of new military commands. The U.S. will operate a command focused on protecting Atlantic shipping lanes, while Germany will help coordinate the movement of military assets around the European continent. And every citizen in the Netherlands is about to become an organ donor unless they explicitly say no. In the U.S. and many other countries, organ donation is opt-in, meaning citizens have to elect to have their organs donated in the event of their unexpected passing. But the new Dutch law flips that process, making organ donation opt-out. Dutch citizens will get 2 letters in the mail in the coming months, and if they don't respond to either, they'll be automatically added to the organ donor rolls. For more global news headlines, visit TalkMediaNews.com.
For a change. The Rick Smith Show.
I gotta tell you, when I first saw the box, it was one of these things where you go, this is a crony situation. They've got somebody lined up to make a ton of money off of it. They're going to privatize all of this. And that there's some backroom shenanigans going on. And you also know that it's going to be the worst garbage that you can get at the lowest price. Look what we did to our soldiers in the Middle East. Moldy bread with rotten produce, just horrible bag lunches for like $30 a piece. Because hey, the contractor had to make money. This obsession with massive profits and of course kicking the poor while they're down at some point has to stop. And I guess my positions have always been, look, I grew up poor. I grew up, with the cupboards empty at times. I can remember, vividly, there being nothing in the house, which fortunately my kids have never seen, thanks to my wife being just the ultimate hoarder when it comes to that. Because, we just don't want that to ever happen. But can you imagine families today in this country who have nothing? And then to have our government say, you know what, we'll give you some crappy stuff that, is highly salted and just terrible. Because, hey, we got it cheap. I mean, it goes beyond just mean-spirited. And these are the same people who tell you that they're Christians and they love Jesus and all of that stuff. And yet, this. And as she pointed out, we hear the Republicans say all the time, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse. They're cheating the system. The amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in the food stamp system is very low. Very low. Because guess what? One, the benefits pathetic. It should be more. But 2, people are hungry. They've got to feed their children. They got to put food on the table. And, I would think that in this country, the least thing we could say is, you know what? No child should go to bed hungry. And I know we changed the name. It's no longer hungry anymore. It's food insecure. But no kid should go to bed hungry. No kid should get up in the morning and go to school hungry. And as she pointed out, it's transformational. I mean, to hear her tell the story about how she saw it within a couple of weeks, dramatic change. You go, what's wrong with us? How do we allow that to happen in the richest country in the world at the wealthiest point in history? And is, more money for the Koch brothers worth it? Is it worth a larger tax breaks for big corporations who aren't already paying their fair share? Is that worth it? And at what point do we say enough is enough already? This is why I think, again, why November is so important. Why we need to be standing up and fighting back and saying, you know what? You got to go. Anyway, if you've missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you're going to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go, wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back with Hour 2. Stick around.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
No matter how hard you try, you can't stop us now.
The proud defender of the American dream, Rick Smith.
Since the prehistoric ages, and the days of ancient Greece, right down to the Middle Ages, planet Earth kept going through changes. And then the Renaissance came, and times continued to change. Nothing stayed the same, but they were always renegades. Like Chief City Bull, Tom Paine, like Martin Luther King.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So it looks like Democrats picked up another state house seat in Florida. Again, you look at this and, the wave is continuing. And as I've been saying, there are a lot of people who their eyes are open. They're jumping off the couch. They're ready to volunteer. They're ready to throw their hats into the ring. They are ready for change. They're ready to stand up against what's been going on. And I think it's a great opportunity. And like we talked with Omar a little bit earlier, somebody who I think could do great things if only given the chance to be in the halls of power. Someone who understands what it's like to be a working person. Someone who understands what it's like to have to pay the bills, who worries about health care, worries about wages. Why can't we get more people like that? Anyway, here to talk a little bit about this upcoming election and whatever else we can bang around, our good friend David Yankovich. David, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Optimistic, hopeful a little bit, guardedly so, but still on the optimistic side.
Oh, you should be. This is what I've been saying for months now. I mean, we're having a brand new wave of candidates who are, going for office that haven't done this before. There's a grassroots movement that we haven't seen probably in a couple of generations. It's an amazing time for sure, and a horrible time, but there's hope.
Yeah, as we've been talking about, you look at this budget. If nothing gets people up off the couch and active is the priorities put forth by this administration in this budget, if nothing wakes up a Trump supporter other than this budget, I don't know what will. I mean, this midterm election should be an absolute bloodbath, just given what they've done in the last year.
Well, there's a lot of things that are in this budget that are going to not be retroactive or not put into place until after the midterms for that reason. So there's going to be a lot of Trump supporters who don't feel the wrath or the blunt of what's happening until 2019. But in the meantime, I mean, just the things that are happening. I mean, trying to do 25 cents, for a wage hike, or the different things that they're putting through for health care, for workers' rights, all of that, it's hurting middle-class families, and people are going to feel that. And even if, they're not paying attention, they'll see it in their paychecks, and they'll start to see it when they go to the gas pump if this goes through.
Yeah, I mean, that 25-cent a gallon gas tax. Now, look, I've heard people suggesting, hikes in the gas tax. I don't think I've heard anyone say 25 cents.
Well, I guess, like for him, he's dominating our news cycle. I can't imagine that he's actually going to get 25 cents, but he'll probably end up getting 10 cents because they're going to negotiate down. When he does things like this, I would just say no. Nope, I'm not voting for it. I'm not doing this. But I mean, this is going to hurt the very people who, there's 435 House races that are up this year. There's governors, there's senators, so all of these things that they're doing, all they're doing is hurting themselves. And you see guys like Omar who are stepping up. You see the Randy Bryces and the different candidates who are rising right now. And if you look at the really inspiring ones, if you look at the candidates that really bring out the best in us and really make you want to root for them, it's guys like that who've never done this. Not too long ago, there was a guy in Alabama named Doug Jones who had never ran before, but he was called to it when, the last election happened, and he felt that this is the time for someone like him to step up too. I'm really excited about where we are as a party, maybe not with the leadership, but with the people.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, I always have my struggles with the Democratic Party, but you're right. The hope is that the people straighten this out. Because look, you look at the policies that have been gone on. You look at that horrible tax heist bill that went through. You look at this budget. You look at all of the facts that none of the things that we expected Trump to do on trade have even been attempted. It appears we're losing jobs. 2017 was one of the more anemic years for job creation. Even if Trump's saying it isn't, it just seems like so much to run on.
Well, we're seeing it too in the stock market with the way that it's been up and down and up and down. And I mean, I know that there's normal fluctuations, but we're seeing, historic drops every other day right now. Definitely signs that the nuclear power plant is having problems. And, there's a lot of that's happening across the country. And even on the world stage, we just had the Olympics this weekend, and, the United States, even as a global leader, just got outshined by a country that literally still has concentration camps. I'll never side with them over anybody in our country, including Pence or Trump, but it was pretty embarrassing that they came across as like the pragmatic people of the world.
Yeah.
Over, what we have.
Did you, I wanted to get your thoughts on Pence then, because, you see the pictures of him sitting while the North Korean delegation is going by. Would you have stood, or would you have done what Pence did?
I mean, I think that as a sign of respect for another country, you still have to stand, right? Because, especially practice what you preach.
Well, or to me, in that arena, you're talking about the Olympics. This is supposed to be about sportsmanship. It's supposed to be about competition. It's not supposed to be about politics.
Well, everything is about politics.
I agree. I understand that, but in that arena,
Yeah,
you stand out of respect for the sportsman. You stand out of respect just to show good sportsmanship, if you will.
Well, I think that the world has been changed many times over by somebody when they show good faith, whether that is a country like North Korea or if that is like, a dictatorship in, Central Africa or wherever. Whenever we show good faith and you have conversations, and you trade or you do things, usually like China. For years, that was, like one of our, kind of enemies, whatever. But usually countries that trade together don't shoot at each other. So, when we're talking about a country like North Korea right now, I think you have to take any chances you can get to calm the tensions in that region and do what you can. And these type of moments where you're in an Olympics or you're in those situations is some of the best times to be political and do the right thing. And,
So are you concerned by the fact that this administration, in looking at the budget, has done such a hatchet job on the State Department that, what it shows me is that they don't really care much about diplomacy while simultaneously pumping up the defense budget?
Well, as you said that to me, I was reminded of a Donald Trump quote when he was running for president where he said, "I alone can fix it. I alone can do it." And as you're asking me that question, I was thinking about the fact that they have gutted just about everything in our government. And Trump is trying to do everything that he can to do it himself, or, well, in his mind, do it himself. And that's why we're failing on every level. You can't do it yourself. You're the president. And honestly, the things he wants to do are terrible anyway.
Yeah, but there was the other saying he would bomb the you-know-what out of him. So if he can't do it, the other option is we're just going to bomb the you-know-what out of him.
The thing I think about with this is, like, we all know North Korea is an issue. We know that it's a world menace. We know that they're doing horrible things with human rights, and they have been for a very, very long time. So, under normal circumstances, I would be inclined to say, like, we have to have a different line of diplomacy and try different things. But the thing is, I have no faith in our leadership, no faith in the president or with those working for him to be able to handle that type of international diplomacy to not get us into a world war with China, Russia, Iran. And, there's a real fast way that this could go in a bad direction.
Yeah.
And so, if there was actually leadership in there that I had faith in, I would probably be standing with them and saying, it's time that we take different types of action that we've taken so far.
We had breakfast the other morning, and there was a couple that, I happened to hear going on, and this woman was with her son, and her son was trying to explain just what you said, that if we bomb North Korea, the Chinese and the Russians will probably be unhappy about it. And she's like, well, bomb them too. And you go, she was obviously a Trump supporter, and everything was just the most simple-minded, if they don't like it, we'll just bomb them. And you do realize we're only 4% of the world's population. We can't bomb everybody.
No, I mean, and that doesn't work anyway. When you do things like that, that's when you get into the history books as being a horrible country and terrible, and it doesn't work. But the thing is, I read a report. I think it was. I mean, there's millions of Americans in South Korea, and I read something like we have. I think it's 3 minutes. So if you're going to if you're going to actually bomb North Korea first as a first strike, you better take out all of their defenses sitting on the South Korean border right there, and you have 3 minutes to do it before that they annihilate South Korea with their weapons. And then on top of that, you have China, who is their ally, and who, if we do go to war with them, most of the North Koreans who are people who are starving are going to flood into China. So this isn't just an American issue. This is a whole region issue, and it's also, I mean, it would upset the entire, Asian continent. It's not something that can just be done like that. And I mean, if you talk to anybody who, and I'm by no means on that level, but if you talk to anybody who's on that level, they'll tell you this is a stupid idea.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the big parade. Evidently, we found out today that the big parade is going to cost as much as $30 million, depending on how big they want to have it. At a time where you're talking about cutting $213 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, we're literally taking food out of the mouths of children, where we could take that $30 million and pay for at least 20,000 people for a year to have food stamps. Seems like a waste of resources to me. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, it's funny that you brought up $30 million, because $30 million is also the price that was for the Meals on Wheels program they were trying to cut last year, which would have taken food out of the mouths of the elderly and the sick and the disabled. I think that there's definitely better ways that we can spend that money, of course. Again, I go back to saying that that's a stupid idea for a president that is, he seems to be so weak-minded that he has to have constant shows of strength to show that he's actually in charge. He's still talking about crowd sizes from last year. And that's all that is. I mean, basically, this entire parade is to show everybody, just like North Korea does, that he is in charge and he has a big military. He needs a little bit more confidence, I think.
Yeah, or bigger hands. I don't know. But here's the thing. I mean,
you said that, not me.
But here's the thing. The sad reality is this kind of mentality is permeating our society. I mean, I can't tell you. We, like I said, we had this. My wife and I were at breakfast, and I'm overhearing this conversation. This is not the first time I've heard this conversation going on and on and on of how we're going to impose our will and we're going to use force and we'll blow up if we have to. To me, that permeates our entire society, so that you end up in a situation like today where and I don't know what this kid's motives were. But you had a kid who walked into a school and shot up the place, killing 17 kids who aren't going to go home today, who aren't going to graduate, aren't going to go to college, who aren't going to get married, who aren't going to lead productive lives because I don't know.
This makes me think of my really good friend Kareem Baker. This is a guy who he spends his days fighting against gun violence, and every day he has to talk about this. He's a victim of gun violence himself, and when I hear this stuff, $30 million for a parade, we want to cut CHIP, we want to cut Medicaid, we want to take tax incentives, we want to raise gas, we want to do all this, but yet today 17 kids died that we know of, and that is 4 more kids that died during Columbine when that shocked the entire world, and this is not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen from this. All the politicians are going to say is, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims for the senseless tragedy. And tomorrow they're going to go back to business as usual. And it's completely senseless. And the president, he just sent out his tweet basically saying just that. And all he wants to do is move on to the next thing. He wants to raise your gas prices after this. He wants to go back to, taking money. I think he took, close to $800,000 or something, or $900,000 from the NRA. I mean, we need people who are going into office that aren't working for lobbyists, but know who their actual constituents are. And their actual constituents are getting killed in schools every day. This is, the 17th, 16th mass shooting in the United States in 2018. And it seems like every other month I turn on the news and I see the headline, the deadliest shooting in the history of this country, or top 5 or top 10. We keep outdoing ourselves. There's really only one thing that we're the best at. We're better than any other country, and that's killing each other. until we get leaders in there who are actual leaders and don't take money from corporations and the NRA and these lobbyists that are basically banking on you dying, the pharmaceutical industries. I'm tired of seeing kids in coffins.
No, and I mean, to me, it's the NRA. I mean, I saw a report today that they spent almost $500 million in the 2016 election cycle. As you said, Trump got, I think it was 11 or 12 million dollars, and the money that they spent against Democrats, demonizing them, just all of this money, promoting guns and really, scaring the heck out of these politicians into the only thing you hear Ted Cruz come out and say is, well, it's a tragedy, but hey, someone drove a truck into something. So, no, there's no equivalency there. Stop already.
I had somebody earlier tell me that I have a spoon, I can kill you with that, but I guarantee that you can't load a spoon up with 40 other spoons and kill anybody in a minute. It's unnecessary, and you know what, like, the shootings and the death count, one is too many. One bullet in a school is too many. But then on top of all of that horrible, all those horrible things, we have them trying to take CHIP away from kids and their insurance, and I know there's an equivalency there of how many more millions of kids are going to die if they are, taking away these community health centers, if they're, taking away food stamps and are trying to put canned goods out there. Like, I mean, there's an attack on the middle and lower class in this country, and a lot more than 17 people are going to die because of it. And I'm not minimizing what happened today. That's completely unnecessary, and it's disgusting that no one has acted on it. But it's just one of the many things that the Republican Party and Congress as a whole has completely failed us on.
Yeah, well, now, as you pointed out, look, the president couldn't and the Republicans could not repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with anything. So they're basically, from what I understand, just gutting all the subsidies. They want to gut all the subsidies that help 4 out of 5 people who get their insurance from the marketplace be able to afford the premiums. You want to talk about killing people, that's going to do it right there.
And that's the thing, I mean, I watch the news, and I have so much hope by what's going to happen in 2018 because of the candidates who are rising up who are fed up with this. And everybody should really be fed up with this. And, I mean, there's this resistance that's happening that's very powerful, and there's people coming together. I mean, they're crowdfunding their health care because they can't afford it. People are literally starving. We have veterans who are homeless. There is so much that is happening, and it's an attack on these people. And, I mean, these are the real issues. Like what we're talking about on this call, this show tonight, these are the real issues that we're facing. Everything else, the politics of it, the messaging, all the gameplay that gets you elected, like none of that matters compared to the things that we're discussing right now. And if we can't fight for that, then what the hell are we fighting for?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is where I come back to the people who have stepped forward and thrown their hat into the ring, the messages that they're carrying, and then the rest of us holding them accountable so that if they do get into office and they are in the halls of power, that we hold them accountable to live up to what they ran on.
That's absolutely it. And the thing is after 2018, if we do this, we can't become complacent. We have 2020 coming up, and we have to stay engaged in a political process. There's a special election coming up in March in Pennsylvania, your home state there, with Conor Lamb. That's really important. And all these races are, but it's not important because of politics. It's not important because we're winning. It's important because people are dying, and we have to fight for that. And, I mean, there's real issues. And it's easy to, even for me, to get absorbed into, the realm of, poll numbers and are we going to win and how much money can we raise and how many emails can we get out and everything else. But at the end of the day, really what matters is that, 17 parents right now are sitting home because their kids aren't coming home. There's how many millions of families sitting around kitchen tables wondering how they're going to survive tomorrow. There's unions that are closing. Amazon's cutting people off. We have people losing their jobs and their livelihoods. Those are the real issues. And the candidates who can reach those, who can talk to the real issues of this country are going to be the ones we see, in November become victorious.
Last question I've got for you. Who are you watching in this election cycle that you think is really exciting?
For 2018?
Yeah. This election cycle.
Well, first off, I was kind of nervous coming on because Omar Bayed I really like a lot. I'm watching him. I'm watching Michael Levin in California. Randy Bryce, of course. We have a little bit of history. I think that, these candidates stepping forward are pretty amazing. Allison Goldbright and Marilyn One's another one. And I've heard rumors that Mallory Hagan in Alabama might be running. Or maybe she did. I haven't fully read read up on it, but there's a lot of them that they're stuffing up, and that's probably the first 5 of the 50 that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, an exciting time to be active. David, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick. You have a great one.
Always good stuff. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
But I do believe in what a crazy man can do.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day 300 commercial laundresses in Kansas City walked off the job demanding a union. Mail laundry delivery drivers successfully organized the previous summer. They joined the women on the picket lines. The Employers Association had financed an open shop drive since the beginning of the war. The laundry companies refused to grant wage increases to the drivers. They also refused to acknowledge the women's demand for a union. The Women's Trade Union League tried to hold hearings about the strike at the Hotel Muehlbach, but the hotel refused to allow striking black workers into the building. As a result, their white co-workers refused to testify. When the hearings were finally moved, the women told of intolerable conditions. Laundresses complained of filthy workplaces and potential fire traps. They reported that laundry owners had put together their own private police force. These guns for hire assaulted women strikers, breaking one woman's arm, another's wrist, and injuring many more in hopes of deterring them from pressing on with their demands. In the 6th week of the strike, 25,000 more Kansas City workers called a general strike. According to historian Maureen Weiner Greenwald, they supported the laundry workers' demands for increased wages, union recognition, and enforcement of state regulations regarding hours and working conditions. Greenwald notes the general strike was relatively peaceful until the Kansas City Railway attempted to run streetcars with scab labor. Finally, the laundry companies agreed to union recognition and later promised wage increases. They soon reneged, but the show of solidarity among workers provided key lessons for future labor struggles in Kansas City. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
It's not enough.
So the other morning, like I said, my wife and I were out to breakfast, and there's this couple there. And, at first we thought it was a couple. Turns out it was a mother-son couple. And the son is, just throwing out, facts and details and, hey, what about this? And it was a conversation I've seen played out and been a part of probably thousands of times. To where you've got, on the one side, you've got someone who's clearly the Democrat in the argument, with all kinds of facts and all kinds of, this and then that, all kinds of analysis, all kinds of, just cold, hard, scientific facts. And then on the other person, you have I believe person. And nothing you can tell them is anything that they're going to bite on. And at one point, I thought she was just trolling him. We'll just nuke them all. But the more I thought about it, I've heard that conversation played out, like I said, thousands of times, where the people truly believe that we have the capacity to just nuke everybody. We have the capacity to just blow up everybody, bomb them all. Guess what? We've been bombing Afghanistan into the Stone Age for the past, 17 years? We've been bombing Iraq for the past 16 years. We're not any closer to quote-unquote victory, I think, than we were. Yes, the terrorists are on the run. But now imagine magnifying that to countries much larger, like China and Russia, and causing the kind of mass chaos and mass refugee problems that bombing a place like North Korea would bring on. And this is the problem when you have people who don't think beyond the initial gut reaction, which is, that could just blow them all up. These are the kind of people I don't want in the halls of power. These are the kind of people I don't want anywhere near a button. I don't want them near any buttons. Not even the buttons on their shirt should they be anywhere around. But it's scary because, and I don't know how we got to this place, to where if you listen to their conversation, and I did intently, my poor wife was, sometimes talking, and I just, sorry, I wasn't there. I was there. And she figured it out and stopped bothering with me. Because I'm watching this conversation and they are talking past one another. They're on the same topic, but, the woman clearly wasn't any interested in what this kid had to say. And the kid was spot on. I mean, he was a real bright kid. I'm going, wow, I'm really impressed. But she wanted no part of it. And, how is it that we have those two very distinct, different kinds of people that I don't know if we'll ever be able to communicate. I don't know if we'll ever be able to come together on things. It's really a very scary point to be in. And every day I guess this is just the stubborn part of me, but I engage in those conversations all the time, believing that at some point our eyes wake up. We open our eyes, we see this budget, for instance. I don't know how you can defend this if you're a working class Trump voter. I don't know how you can look at the tax plan and defend it as a working class Trump voter. I don't know how you can defend taking food out of the mouths of children and of seniors and this idiotic box idea. Other than minds are just polluted and corrupted to the point of there's no hope. And, I remember I got about halfway through their conversation and I just, I got to stop. This is just going to make me crazy because clearly there's no talking to that woman. And I often think that, maybe I need to start thinking about that in my life, because I talk to people all the time and it's just, it's mind numbing. And from morning to night, they're inundated with the fake news, with the Fox and the blathering on right-wing talk radio, which you do know is all coordinated. So that morning to night, you're inundated with every bit of insanity. And of course, at the point where she threw out Uranium-1 without actually understanding that that it was actually owned by a foreign company to begin with, you just go, okay, I give up. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had one of those conversations where, you're laying it out and the person's just bomb them, nuke them, heck with them? I'd love to hear it. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back with Sarah Burris from Raw Story as we pick up on the stories of the day. Right back. Stick around.
We explore, marching on the Capitol to lobby leaders for involvement. 3,000 people screaming out, "Where's our government?" Lawsuits and arraignments, members under company surveillance. Public divided, either they love us or they hate us. Profit billions off our back, and it's still not enough. They should have took into account that we never give up. We'll be here one day longer. One day longer. The people's voice is stronger. The people's voice is stronger. We work hard for our money. We work hard for respect. Keep fighting for these rights for generations. It's next. One day longer. One day longer. The people's
Your
voice is
working class
stronger.
radio experience, where hard work, common sense, and rational thought are a reality. The Rick Smith Show.
This morning I submitted legislative principles to Congress that will spur the biggest and boldest infrastructure investment in American history.
Trump's infrastructure proposal scam shifts costs onto states and cities and guts clean water and clean air regulations. Puerto Rico suffers a new blackout. Sea level rise is accelerating. Plus, Tesla and South Australia team up to build the world's largest virtual power plant.
Virtual power plant?
Virtual power plant.
All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Did you watch this speech? He mentioned all the floods, the wildfires, the storms we've had. Never once linked them to climate change. Yes, probably the work of the deep state, wouldn't you imagine?
I knew it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the scams never seem to end with this Trump administration.
No, they don't. On Monday, the Trump administration finally released what the administration and the media are misleadingly calling a $1.5 trillion proposal to repair the nation's crumbling infrastructure. But in reality, it is just a paltry $200 billion that will be cut from other crucial programs.
And spent over 10 years.
Right. And Trump's proposal would only put up 10 to 20% of the cost of those projects, requiring cash-strapped state and local governments to come up with the rest by raising taxes, selling off public assets, or privatizing projects like roads and water systems. Democrats slammed the proposal as another giveaway to private companies. At a recent mayor's conference, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti criticized a leaked version of the proposal.
Giving us a nickel or a dime for every 95 cents, every 90 cents we put in, doesn't allow you to count our dollars as your infrastructure package. And taking money away from things like community development block grants, existing Tiger grants, New Starts, which helps us build a middle class, doesn't count either.
Trump's infrastructure proposal also severely cuts back environmental impact reviews and local community input. Trump's plan doesn't even mention hardening infrastructure against extreme weather disasters. Trump and the Republicans apparently think you're too stupid to remember that they just gave a $1.5 trillion tax cut to corporations and the rich that could have paid for his $1.5 trillion infrastructure scam.
That's because of the tax and spend Democrats.
Apparently, the tax cut and borrow Republicans. As if to underscore the long-term consequences of not investing in infrastructure, Puerto Rico officials say a major widespread blackout on Sunday was caused by an explosion and fire at an electrical substation. Electricity has been restored to most customers, officials say, but it was yet another setback in the island's recovery 5 months after Hurricane Maria destroyed their decrepit infrastructure, causing the longest blackout in U.S. history.
Any idea what led to that explosion and fire?
That is still under investigation. More than 500,000 Puerto Ricans are still without electricity, and tens of thousands are still without clean water. Also impacting U.S. coastal infrastructure, the rate of sea level rise has accelerated. It's tripled over the past 25 years and will continue to accelerate in coming decades, thanks to the melting of Antarctica and Greenland.
Thanks, melting Antarctica and Greenland.
That's according to NASA. The study has a conservative estimate projecting that sea level rise will surge more than 2 feet by 2100. In the meantime, creating bigger storm surges and saltwater intrusion of fresh water supplies in coastal cities.
Great.
In other news, remember that massive Iranian oil tanker that exploded and sank last month in the South China Sea?
I do.
The New York Times reports that toxic petroleum condensate may have begun to contaminate some of the most important fishing grounds off the coasts of China and Japan. Tests show that fish caught within 5 nautical miles of the sunken ship contained traces of petroleum hydrocarbons.
And this is a weird spill because it's not like the usual thick crude oil spills. This is kind of invisible.
Right, and it's impossible to clean up.
Invisible except for the damage that it's causing, I guess.
Finally, some good news. In South Australia, Tesla's utility-sized battery storage farm that was built in less than 90 days on a bet is now proving to be so reliable and so cheap during Australia's current record-breaking hot summer that the province is now teaming up with Tesla to build what Tesla calls the world's largest virtual power plant. Over the next 4 years, solar panels and Tesla Powerwall batteries will be installed on 50,000 homes, networked to act as a single solar power plant. It's projected to cut residents' utility bills by 30% because, as Tesla notes, unlike the rising costs of natural gas-powered plants, sunlight is free.
Well, nice to see the infrastructure being improved in other countries, if not ours. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
So last week you had a guy resign from the Trump administration because he's a wife beater. And today, a senior official with the National Economic Council, a top Trump advisor, has resigned because evidently he was a pot smoker. That seems to be what held up his security clearance. He was working, like a lot of people in the Trump administration, on a temporary security clearance. They have now, I guess, told him, nope, ain't going to happen. Pothead, you're out. He has resigned. Now, understand, there are like 36 other people who are in the same situation, that they can't get their security clearances finished up, and you got to wonder what's in the background. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world and the latest news over at Raw Story. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. So what'd your sweetie get you? Anything good?
I got 4 dozen roses and some sort of stuffed animal Valentine's Day monster.
Wow, buddy, you're ruining it for the rest of us. 4 dozen roses? That's a bit overkill, don't you think?
They're really, really pretty. And there's a set that's like red and white in a blue vase, so it's patriotic, and it's just kind of like, I got a little sappy about it. I was like, that's so pretty.
Oh, that's so sweet. Now every guy in the country who didn't get flowers for his girlfriend's going to hate him.
Right?
He sucked them up for the rest of us. Well, good. The first place on the Valentine's Day, the day of love. I might as well start off with the Stormy Daniels tale. Evidently, she's free to talk now because it wasn't Trump who paid her off.
You know, that's so fascinating. And you would think that somebody like Michael Cohen, who is, I've heard, a really good attorney and clearly has been in the legal profession for quite a while and learned from his father, who was supposed to be the best, you would think that he would know these things. But I mean, my assumption, I haven't obviously seen the agreement that he and Stormy Daniels had, but my assumption is that within the agreement, it said that if either of the parties acknowledged that there was some sort of deal, then the deal is null and void. And I think that's why whenever we saw her on Jimmy Kimmel's show, she was playing coy and not saying one way or the other. I think that's because it was written into the agreement. So the fact that he acknowledged that there was an agreement, I bet that is what tipped the scale here. And I mean, if her manager says that she's free to talk, then I'm sure she's probably waiting for the checks to roll in from whatever tabloid wants to talk to her.
Now, I'm sure the Penthouse guy is just waiting to write a check as we speak. Although, to be honest, I don't know if the Penthouse guy would get into it because everyone's already seen her nude.
True. I mean, I think this is going to be something like probably the Sun or the Daily Mail or TMZ or something like that. One of the big guys who who do payouts for stuff like that are probably going to jump on it.
Probably no made-for-TV movie, though, right?
You never know. I mean, people are scraping the bottom of the barrel for made-for-TV movies these days.
But, again, there's part of me that goes, we've already spent way too much time worrying about this. Look, this to me is probably the least of what Donald Trump has done and gotten away with, and why we spend so much time on just this. To me, the most egregious thing was his statement that he walked in on a bunch of naked 15-year-olds during the Miss Teen USA pageant. To me, that's more egregious than this.
Oh, totally. I mean, this is just one of those things where I feel like if you understand the history of Donald Trump and you already have questioned his morals, then chances are this is not going to be a surprise to you, and this is not going to sway you one way or the other. At the same time, his supporters are not going to be swayed by this either, because if you're fine with him walking in on a bunch of teenage girls at a Miss USA pageant, then, you're not going to have an issue with him screwing a porn star.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the least of my concerns whatsoever. I mean, if I were one of the 15-year-olds, where's that IBEW guy who went after Larry Nassar? Where are one of those kids' parents going after Trump?
For real, I mean, this is really sort of one of those things about him that is unsettling, and he's made those little jokes here and there throughout the last 15 years on Howard Stern, and it just is so skeezy. And it's obviously it was disgusting with him saying that he would grab women, but at the same time, like, you're talking about a dude who is objectifying and sexualizing teenage girls, and I mean, come on, man.
That's it. Come on, man. But the absolute worst Trumpian quote ever was, "If she weren't my daughter, I'd be dating her."
Right? I mean, gross.
I don't know. You got to wonder. Let's move along. Evidently, the Fox News folks are defending that Mike Pence hears God speaking to him.
Oh my God, who thought that was? I mean, okay. First of all, these people have no idea that it was a joke. That Joy Behar made this joke, and it's a long-standing joke. This is a joke that I heard back in the 90s on the X-Files. That's how old this joke is. And it's the joke that if you talk to God, it's prayer, but if God talks back to you, then it's schizophrenia.
That's not a joke. That's not a joke. That's reality.
Well, it is now. I mean, that's the scary part, is before it was just like you were just kidding around and being silly. And I think most people who are people of faith and who, grew up in the church and still hang on to their Christian values understand that there are a lot of signs and signals that you can interpret as, God influencing your life. But nobody hears voices, right? Like, this is a totally different level here. And that's the thing that Omarosa said about Mike Pence, is he actually hears Jesus talking to him and telling him what to do. And that's a little unsettling, where it's like, I get it if you see a beautiful rainbow and that tells you to, do something for LGBT people, whatever, that's your own interpretation. But Mike Pence is hearing voices, allegedly. So that's just weird. One of the things actually that Joy Behar talked about, it was Whoopi Goldberg talked about on that same episode, is she recalled when John F. Kennedy was running for office and everyone was really concerned about him being Catholic, and they were worried about the Pope being a huge influencer on him, and that he would consider his Catholicism first before he would consider America first.
Yep.
And so this idea that we have come from that now to Mike Pence hearing voices, and that being not just accepted by Fox News, but touted as a legitimate quality for a vice president, is just absurd.
And I loved the woman, and I can never say her name, Tori something or other, Lahren or
Tommy Lauren.
Okay, her. She said, again, they have they live in a world where women can be men and men can be women. But if you're a conservative Christian, you have a mental illness. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I do agree that, a lot of the conservative Christian people that I know, the hyper crazy people like Mike Pence, I do believe that is a mental illness.
I think a lot of these people are, we've talked before about the evangelical community basically compromising every single one of their morals. They come out and say that they support family values, but really the family values that they support are that they're anti-choice and that they want a crazy right-wing president in there to appoint crazy right-wing judges. So these are not actual family values people, because if they were, they would not be supporting Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And, that's the mental illness part for me. It's like, if you say that you are a Christian, but you support this, then you're not a Christian.
Yeah. One of the other things that got me is, I guess later in the interview, you had Brian Kilmeade, who I really cannot stand, and I hope someone does smack him, because he needs a smacking more than probably anybody I've ever seen. But he went into she's Jewish, isn't she, kind of frame? And I'm going,
right? Talk about like name dropping some anti-Semitism in there, right?
Yes.
Like, dude, she is obviously Italian. Like, she came from first generation Italian immigrant parents. So come on, dude. Like, it's one thing to be, dropping in some anti-Semitism, but now you're just like completely clueless. Like, you expect this stuff on Fox News, but dude, come on.
Which leads me to the place where, I was talking about earlier. I said, my wife and I had breakfast the other morning, and I was listening in on people a couple of tables away's conversation where you had, this woman who was clearly a Trump supporter with the, just bomb everything, I believe kind of mentality, and her son who was with her, trying to lay out fact after fact after fact. And just I watched her, I listened to her, and I'm going, these are people who watch nothing. This is somebody who watches nothing but Fox News morning to night and is completely brainwashed by these dimwits. And it's scary. We live in scary times.
Yeah, we do. And this goes back to bring it back to the Mike Pence Hearing Voices thing. Like, these are the people who are creating our policies now. And we used to have this government that I feel like responded with a very calm and measured proportional responses. People who recognized that there was more than just their own political ideology to governing. And now we've just become this world of insanity and far right-wing ideology that is now policy, and it's not representative of the United States, and it certainly doesn't do anything for our profile on the world stage.
No, it's most certainly scary times. And I got to wonder if Jesus had told Mike Pence that the Russians hacked our elections. I wonder if we could get God to say, Mike, the Russians hacked your elections, if he'd believe it.
Instead of a burning bush, it would be like a burning server. Like
or a burning ballot or something. I don't know. But something from high on the mount, maybe a stone tablet with, Mike, they meddled in the elections. Do something.
Right. You wonder if what it would take. You could come up with all kinds of crazy stuff to send Mike Pence.
Yeah, because I look at their director of national intelligence, this Dan Coats, who testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday, saying, "Look, there's there. Do something."
I know, right? Like, talk about flagging. The sounding the alarm. Like, he was just like he straight up said that the United States is under attack. And he talked about Russia, but I think the other piece of it is that he also talked about China, North Korea, and Iran. And so if the Trump administration wants to pretend like they're not hitting Russia, at the very least, it would be nice if they could develop some kind of cybersecurity that would protect us against the other countries.
Yeah.
And it would help with the whole Russia situation too, but of course not.
I mean, we're
Heaven forbid.
We're going to turn into a country, a playground for all the cyber terrorists around the world, because we've got a president who's got his either head in the sand or up his keister, and just because, and I truly believe it's because he thinks that it will even further delegitimize his presidency.
No, that's exactly what it is. He honest to God, thinks that if he agrees that the United States is hacked, or that there are cyber criminals that are coming after the United States, then that makes his presidency invalid. And it's like, dude, you've already been sworn in. Like, there's no going back from that. So, you know, if there was going to be some sort of complaint waged, that time has come and gone. And we're to a point now where, you know, the Republican Party used to be the party of national security and the Patriot Act, and now they're like anything but. You know, like, these are people who are now bad on national security and bad on protecting the homeland, just simply because Donald Trump doesn't want to look bad to people.
I mean, it's crazy. And you know, the other part of this, and finally, the last story I want to get to, you had written about an Idaho restaurateur who evidently he's been known for blackface stunts. I guess now he's dressing up as Billy Burrito.
Yeah, so this guy is, he likes to say that he's just trying to find creative ways to promote his restaurant, and that he's not intentionally trying to be racist, and that most people don't think that it's racist at all, which just sounds like straight out of the Donald Trump playbook, right? Like, that just sounds like a statement that Donald Trump has already said about the racist thing. And I mean, this is a guy who put on blackface and did his own like video on Facebook. Well, now to promote his Mexican style pizza menu, he's putting on a sombrero and brown face and a poncho and calling himself Billy Burrito, and he thinks that it's not racist because obviously Billy is not a Mexican name. And you're just like, dude, come on. Again, I feel like this is the whole, like, the tagline for this whole conversation. Come on, man. Come on.
But his name's Brad. Where did he get Billy from?
Right? I have no idea. None of this makes sense.
And you look, here's the other part of this. If I want Mexican food, the last person I'm going to buy Mexican food is from a guy named Brad.
And I want to say, too, like, if you're going to have, like, legit Mexican food, why would you go to a pizza joint to get it?
All right. And sold to you by a guy named Brad. I just don't get it.
Exactly.
But I guess it's Idaho. So
yeah, fair
there you
point.
go. There you go. Sarah, great stuff. I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work there at Raw Story.
Thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day.
You as well. Happy. And tell him I'm not thrilled. 4 dozen roses? Really? Overkill.
I know, right?
But maybe you're worth it. There you go. Thanks so much, Sarah. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many. When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces. and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
To this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose.
So, I think we all know that Donald Trump likes to embellish a bit. Like any good used car salesman, there's always some questionable statements. Well, you may remember that Donald Trump bragged about how that the General Motors Corporation was going to shut down a plant in South Korea. They're going to shut down the factory there in a place called Gunsan, Gunsan. I'm going to do that this May, and they were going to move it back to Detroit. Only problem is the people at GM didn't know it. They know that they're closing the Gunsan plant there in May. They're doing it, they say, for some reorganizing. Yet they didn't know that they were moving that plant back to Detroit. And the thing is and as Think Progress points out, the thing is Trump has done this a bunch of times. He's taken credit for things that never happened. He's taken credit for things that were never going to happen. And he's taken credit for things that other people did. And if you look at, the job creation at places like Toyota and Intel and Exxon and Charter Communications and Ford and, go down the list, SoftBank, Fiat, Chrysler, Lockheed Martin, Walmart, you look at all of the job creation that they were claiming, all done before he was elected president. They had announced it well before. The intentions were all there. It's just that Trump said, hey, look what I did. And his supporters, and I get this all the time, we had the best job creation ever under President Trump. It was better than Obama ever did. And you go, no, during Trump's tenure in 2017, it was only 2 million jobs created. He actually took credit for 400,000 jobs that Obama was created under his term. But hey, since I should get September, October, and November too. And you go, fact is, 2017, most anemic job creation year since 2011. That's the reality. But yet you listen to the Trumpians, it is the greatest year ever. It was fantastic. The economy was just smoking along. And yeah, Wall Street was fat and happy because you know what? They knew tax cuts were coming. They knew they were going to make tons of money. They knew deregulation is coming. They knew that we're going to be just slashing and burning the regulatory bodies that oversee, our water, our air, our land, our lives. Never mind. And the thing that gets me is you get people who are saying, well, since Wall Street's doing well, the rest of us are. And look, I don't know about you, but I've walked down many a main street that's not doing well. While Wall Street is, they're flush. The billionaire class, never happier. Average everyday working people are struggling to make ends meet. And yet you look at the budget, and I go back to this crummy budget that, understand, and I said this yesterday, is not going to pass. This isn't going to be the budget that we get. But it's the priority. It's the intent. It's the thought process that went into this, saying, look, we're going to enrich the rich and we're going to harm the poor. We're going to go after the disabled. We're We're going to literally take food out of the mouths of children and poor people. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I've been hammering on that because it's just, when do we finally wake up and realize that it could be any of us at any time that end up in that situation? You don't know what tomorrow brings us. But two, when do we go, you know what? They're telling us they're these kind of mean-spirited, punitive type people. Should we believe them? And the answer is yes, you should believe them. It is that simple. Again, highly suggest taking a look at the budget numbers. And, oh, by the way, just lastly, Republicans can never say they're fiscally responsible ever again. Ever, not even clinically. No way, shape, or form. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go, wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.